Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Welcome to this morning's Heritage Kingston meeting. Mr. Chair, I'll just ask you to unmute for a second, if you don't mind. Oh.
Does that help?
That does help. Excellent. Thank you. All right, we can go ahead and get started, Mr. Chair. We do have quorum at this time, only just. I do want to note that I have received regrets from Councillor Doherty, Paul Banfield, Jennifer Demeter, and Janine O'Reilly. Councillor Oosterhoff also mentioned that he would be late this morning getting into the meeting. So just a note to our committee members who are present, if any one of you are to drop off, we will just have to pause the meeting to make sure that we have quorum as we continue forward in the agenda. At this time, Mr. Chair, I'd also like to check in with Mr. Smith and make sure that he is in fact there and that we can hear him.
I'm here.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ted. Appreciate that. As for staff joining us this morning, Mr. Chair, we do have Jennifer Campbell, Director of Heritage Services, Kevin Gibbs, Manager of Heritage Programming, Andrea Gummo, Manager of Heritage Planning, Ryan Leary, Senior Planner, Philip Perrell, Intermediate Planner, and Alex Rose Thompson, Planner. We also have Ian Sullivan as our meeting host this morning, and I'm Elizabeth Fawcett. I am the committee clerk for Heritage Kingston. We have a number of applicants and agents joining us this morning to assist with the files, and we currently have no members of the public joining in the gallery at this time. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it over to you to get us started.
Okay, thank you very much. At 9:32, can I just confirm that it's 7 members present? So an approving vote needs 4 votes.
We have 6 members present.
6. 1, 2, 3, 6. Sorry. Yep.
Yep. So yes, majority would still be 4.
Is 4. Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome everybody. You have an agenda. You have 2 additions to that agenda, 12C correspondence from Don Taylor and 12D correspondence from Bruce Downey. And I'm accepting those as parts of the agenda. Any other concerns about the agenda? And if not, I'll look for a mover of the amended agenda. Don Mitchell, that moving. And Don Taylor seconding. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of approving the amended agenda?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ted. Confirmation of the minutes of May the 18th. There is one minor change, which the clerk has made on the official copy on page 4. 5 lines from the bottom, we wrote, he noted that the dormer should be smaller, and that is going to be changed. And he noted that the dormers should be smaller, and that will be changed to, he noted that the dormer windows should be smaller. And with that, are there any other corrections to those minutes? And seeing none, looking for a mover to approve the minutes as amended.
Move.
Donald and Ted Smith, thank you. Further discussion? And seeing none, those in favor, if you can raise your hands.
Aye.
Thank you, Ted. And they carry as our minutes. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. I will be withdrawing on 33 Brock Street, and Don Taylor, you will be chairing for that part of the meeting. Any others? And if any appear as we go through, please make it known so that we don't get into awkwardnesses. Presentations, I don't believe there are any. Delegations, I don't believe there are any. Briefings, which brings us to the business. Who's going to start? Is it Kevin or is it Jennifer?
Sorry, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I'm having trouble with
okay.
my buttons this morning.
Well, you were the other day. You're in the middle of Cataract, the new crossing, saying you're going to drop over or something. And,
That's right. Yeah, I was on a site visit the other day. I just wanted to take a little bit of time ahead of the presentation that will be shared by Kevin. I felt like we really needed to acknowledge, as many of you already know, Paul Robertson's passing. Many of you worked with Paul over the years through the Heritage Committee and in the museum and heritage sector here in Kingston. Paul's a dear friend and obviously worked closely with us in our department. And he did pass away on Tuesday. So I just, wanted to formally acknowledge it with the committee and also share with everyone that Paul's service has been arranged. If anyone has interest in attending, it will be on June 25th at St. George's, a place very dear to him. So the service is at 11 a.m. and then it will be followed by a reception in the hall there at 12. So sorry to start on a sad note, but we felt it was appropriate that we really did need to. Paul is through the work that Kevin is carrying on, and we just wanted to, give him some space in the meeting today. So thank you so much.
Good. No, thank you very much for mentioning that. Okay, so we go to Kevin.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I would like to do today is give a brief outline of City Museum activities and Heritage Services programming in 2022, but also seeking input and advice on the activities that I'll be talking about today. And my email address is up there on the screen if that is a more convenient way to provide any sort of input that the committee might have. Next slide, please. So in Heritage Services, we take a fairly broad approach to heritage, including not just tangible heritage, so the things that people can pick up or touch, but also natural heritage and intangible heritage. So those aspects of heritage, customs and traditions that you can't pick up and touch. Within our programming for 2022, a couple of themes that really stand out are the importance of the environment and sustainability, but also the importance of identity and improving or increasing the number of voices that are included in the programs that we provide and the exhibitions that we produce in the museums. Next slide, please. So as you may know, most of our programming and exhibitions take place across 3 different sites: the Pump House Museum, where we currently have a new exhibition for 2022, which is all about the history of transportation in Kingston. The Mclaughlin Woodworking Museum, and the biggest development there is that we've transitioned the space to a dedicated programming space. So people won't be able to go in, drop in to see exhibitions there, but it will be the locus for a lot of different programs and workshops. And then of course, Kingston City Hall National Historic Site and the Market Wing Cultural Space. We've just started City Hall tours last week. Restarted City Hall tours, but we're also looking to improve or increase the number of opportunities for programming that move beyond these sites. And I'll talk a bit about those today as well. And the last thing I'll mention is the Indigenous community support that Heritage Services provides. So next slide, please. So I'll talk briefly about natural heritage first. So this is something that's been very important for the history of Kingston, and the location of Kingston, of course, was encouraged by the natural resources that are available. And in terms of our programming spaces, the Mclaughlin Woodworking Museum really is a gem, given its rural location and the opportunities there for providing workshops and programs about the natural world. So we have educational programs for school groups. We have other sorts of workshops that people can join that talk about biodiversity of plants and animals, habitat preservation, and those sorts of things. The Pump House, of course, the history of the building is very much connected to the importance of water in the city of Kingston. So we have programs that are about those sorts of things, but we also talk about water preservation. And in our recent exhibit, or ongoing exhibit on the history of travel in Kingston, or the history of transportation in Kingston, there are opportunities to talk about the importance of the natural world, specifically water travel, in the history of the city. At the end of last year, we did some outreach to local schools and programming with local schools at K-12 educational programs to talk about the third crossing. One of the things that really was interesting about this outreach was the importance of the impact of the third crossing bridge on the natural world to the students that were participants. So towards the end of 2022, when the bridge does open for the first time rather, we will be thinking about offering more programming to school groups that talk about this importance, this relationship between the natural world and the opening of the bridge. Next slide, please. Of course, we also have lots of opportunities to talk about tangible heritage, the things that people can touch and look at. At City Hall, we've restarted tours for the 2022 season, so people have been coming through the building for the last week or so to appreciate the built heritage of this part of Kingston. We also have, or will be restarting tours of Ontario Street so people can put City Hall into its broader context. But one of the things that we'll be doing for 2022 is trying to move our tours beyond the downtown core of Kingston by offering bike tours to less visited parts of the city to appreciate that diversity of heritage within Kingston. I've already mentioned the new exhibits on the move, History of Transportation in Kingston at the Pump House. So this is an opportunity for people to come in and see some of the objects from the civic collection, which aren't often put on display, as well as loan objects that we've gotten from individuals and other museums in the area. At the Mclaughlin Woodworking Museum, we have lots of workshops and programs for educational groups and camps. And one of the interesting things about these is that I think it shows how the different aspects of heritage really can blend together. So we could imagine one of the things that we have is a workshop on building a canoe paddle. So people have the opportunity to build a canoe paddle, which is a tangible piece or tangible product, but it also gives an opportunity to talk about the intangible aspects of craftsmanship, of producing things, and the history of making. But it is also a touch point for talking about the natural world as well, because of course, many people use canoes to explore the natural world and water sources and the environment. So that's quite interesting. We also have aspects of online resources that people can appreciate. This was certainly very important during the pandemic, but as we move to reopen spaces, I think they're still quite important. So people have the opportunity to take a virtual tour of City Hall through the City of Kingston website, and also have the opportunity to look at the diversity of the city or the civic collection on the website. So we can, people can see some of those things that aren't on display and aren't typically on display. So next slide, please. So the last thing I'll talk about is intangible heritage. And this is in some ways, perhaps the more difficult type of heritage to have programming for, but we certainly have some opportunities here. That we have opportunities at City Hall through the Market Wind Cultural Space that are really focused on identity. So people can come in and learn about identity, and particularly the sorts of identities, the sorts of community groups that aren't typically represented in discussions of built heritage. At the Pump House, we're continuing our long-running Trains and Tots program. And each week in Trains and Tots, there's a different theme that the preschool crowd can appreciate. Some of these are on natural heritage, some of them are on tangible heritage, but there are others that are all about intangible heritage. So topics like dance or music. In correspondence with National Indigenous Peoples Day, we have a program that's all about play based on the Cree concept of Kimatawana, which means, we play, we all play. So the universality of play, which of course is very important for children of all cultures and groups. And we'll also be hosting our long-running campfire song series. Traditionally, this has taken place at the Mclaughlin in 2021. It moved to Glen Burnie, so we're thinking about how we can move this program to multiple locations around Kingston to reach the broadest groups. Next slide, please. And I'll just briefly mention here the Indigenous community support that Heritage Services provides. Of course, the Indigenous community has lots of different activities and events that take place throughout the year and throughout the city. So we do offer logistical support for community organized events in any way that we can. So things like booking park spaces, providing other sorts of city resources that would be beneficial to these events that are organized not by Heritage Services, but by the Indigenous community. So next slide, please. And this is my last slide here, just to mention some of the future planning that we'll be doing in Heritage Services from a programming and exhibition side of things. Of course, during 2022, we'll be offering many programs, but we also have to be thinking about what's taking place in 2023. So at the Pump House, the 2023 planned exhibit is all about Black history in Kingston. So we're looking very forward to producing that. At City Hall and in the Market Wind Cultural Space at City Hall, we'll be looking or revisiting some of the niche cases that are scattered throughout the building. We'll also be looking to redesign the Sir John A. Macdonald Room to update that space. And in the Market Wind Cultural Space, we'll be looking to put in an exhibit on Indigenous history and culture. And then lastly, at the Mclaughlin Woodworking Museum, to think more about tangible heritage, we're planning, and this will probably be beyond 2023, but we're planning on installing or thinking about installing a sensory garden that would allow people to engage with the natural world using different senses, and particularly for individuals that have different experiences, different abilities, who would like to engage with the natural world and natural heritage. So thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much, Kevin. Are there any questions to Kevin? Knowing you've got his email address, knowing that you've got time now to think, and I'm sure make suggestions as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for that. We don't have to do anything to that report, I don't believe, do we? Okay, so we go on.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I was a little bit slow on responding to you. The only thing I would ask is that perhaps for those who are present, if there's any members of the public that may wish to provide response.
Members of the public, do we have any?
Mr. Chair, we don't have any in the gallery. However, for the purposes of this business item, any of the agents or applicants here would be able to participate at this time, should they have any comments that they would like to make. And I don't see any hands.
Okay. Oh, I've just messed myself up again.
Mr. Chair, I do believe you are on mute. We cannot hear you.
There you go. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good. Okay, thank you. Was that a hand up, Donald? Yeah. You're on mute as well.
Thank you. I just have two quick comments. They aren't really questions. One is, and I think just to put it in the minds of the committee members, one is, I think, as a person who came to Kingston in 2010, one of the tourism things I'm not seeing that I think Kevin and that department through their work might be able to do is to find one thought that kind of connects it all. A lot of it at times hits you as very diverse, lots of different locations, lots of different things. So water may be it. You may find a better one, but I know coming from a city like Victoria, BC, their tourism, they really found a way to sort of connect all the pieces and all the different experiences. And then the second thought is I do think we should be commending staff, and I want you to go even further with the idea of integrating experiential, using all of the senses and really bringing it alive, especially post-COVID 2 years. I think it's really important, particularly for kids. And just one very quick example, I still remember, 40 years later, I grew up in the heart of the Nisga'a Nation out west, and part of our school curriculum was carving. And you don't ever change that sense of the smell of cedar and the carving and the tactile. And I think that's really important. And I think we can go much further that direction as well. But thank you for your presentation.
Good, thank you, Don. Any other comments? Excellent. Okay, stat business, D 2 to 4 Cataraqui Street. I think that's Alex. Alex, welcome.
Good morning, through you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just wait for my slides to come up. Here we are. Okay, so this is an application under Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act for 2 to 4 Cataraqui Street. Next slide, please. So many of us know this property, though it is located on the south side of Cataraqui Street. It abuts the K&P Trail and is adjacent to the Great Cataraqui River, also known as the Rideau Canal. Next slide, please. The property contains a large red brick industrial building known as the Woolen Mill. designed by William Newlands and constructed in 1880. Next slide, please. So the property is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act and is adjacent to the Rideau Canal, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The designation bylaw describes the building as built for the Kingston Cotton Manufacturing Company about 1880. This red brick, many window building is one of the very few large industrial buildings still standing. Its exterior has few alterations. Its interior has been well adapted to a number of modern uses. Next slide, please. So the conversion of the window opening to a door opening was completed in the spring of 2021 without prior Ontario Heritage Act approval. The conversion included the removal of the sill and brickwork to lengthen the opening, as well as the installation of new brick infill to reduce the width of the opening. The area above the door has been clad in metal siding. So the current design does not complement the architectural style or heritage character of the building. So this application seeks to improve upon this design and to formalize the alteration. So I do want to mention that the previous or former window opening was original to the building. However, the sash window that was removed was not original or period and was part of the 1990s rehabilitation of the building. Next slide, please. So through discussions with the applicant and their architect, there is agreement that the existing infill brickwork has been well executed and that its removal would be challenging and potentially damaging to the surrounding brickwork. Therefore, this proposal includes the removal of the metal cladding above the door, the continuation of the infill brickwork to the arch, and the installation of a new painted metal door system with a large volume of glazing with transom and side light. The painted metal frame and door will match the cream color of the adjacent windows. So this design is more compatible with the building's style and character. However, Heritage Planning staff and Heritage Kingston members have raised concerns over the size of the transom, which is on the large side. This is owing to the relatively tall window opening, which is further heightened by its conversion to a door opening. So staff and the applicant's architect discussed increasing the height of the door, which is currently already 8 feet, which is taller than an average size door. One Heritage Kingston member suggested the addition of Muntin bars to match the adjacent windows. The Heritage Planning staff, as well as the applicant's architect, did share the concern that the addition of Muntin bars may draw additional attention to the door, given that the divisions of the door, the side light, and the transom do not comfortably align with the divisions on the adjacent sash windows. So in other words, just by having plain glazing on the door and the side light, that we don't want the transom to become even more of a design feature. Next slide, please. So staff acknowledged that this is not the optimal design solution for the conversion of the window opening. However, given its location on the ground floor and the retention of the remaining window openings on this elevation, the predominant rhythm and symmetry of this elevation will be conserved and continue to be visually appreciated. Heritage Planning staff believe that the proposed design is an improvement upon the existing and that overall the heritage character and cultural heritage value of the building will be conserved. Finally, it's worth noting that the conversion is theoretically reversible in the future through very careful and skilled masonry work. So with that, I'll move to our recommendation on the next slide, which includes several conditions. And I would welcome any discussion on this now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. And I, accept that this is not an ideal situation, but it's one that we need to work with. Committee members, comments, questions? Be with you in a moment, Nate. If the committee has, Don Taylor.
Yes, I think we're all kind of sorry the way that this has developed. And I think we really should, somebody should be asking how it could happen, because the owners are very familiar with heritage buildings and have done a lot of good things. It's just so surprising that this work was done, presumably without a building permit as well as a heritage permit. And in that context, I remember when there was discussion of requiring fees for heritage permits, I suggested that a much better route would be to assess fines for people who do heritage alterations without permits. And so I would just wonder whether the applicant or staff would comment on those remarks.
Okay, Alex or whomever.
I would, if it's appropriate, I think Nate Dornekamp would be best placed to speak to how it happened and
Okay.
the history of this alteration.
Okay, Nate, welcome. Hi.
How are we doing?
Just fine, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, no, I appreciate the work Alex and her team has done on this. And Mr. Taylor, you're 100% correct. This was done hastily. This was done without a permit and without process that I am very familiar with. I will say, as a commercial landlord, the last 3 years has been tough. But we do have a great group of tenants. We offered all rent reductions through the landlord that were offered. We participated in all those government initiatives willingly. And with this particular tenant, it's a long-standing tenant. We tried the patio just on the pavement with the new patio bylaw, but there's simply too much walking. They were about 250 feet round trip to and from a table. They had to go out the front door, down the steps and around. And it got to the point where we, in no uncertain terms, we were going to lose a tenant, lose a business if we didn't act. And we didn't get this outdoor space correctly located. So it reduced the trip length for staff. It made it more of a patio setting for the patrons. And so with that, as well as the rebates and the support we were giving, we found it a calculated risk to act on their behalf and not essentially just not lose a tenant, not lose a business through no fault of theirs. This restaurant, like anyone else, didn't know a pandemic was coming. And once this patio was open, I was ready for the proverbial black eye. But I'm a big boy and I can take a hit. And I will say the people that frequent these restaurants are typically a little on the older side, a little more COVID cautious. And they found comfort in dining outdoors, and the staff, they were able to retain all of their staff through this by essentially not making every shift a marathon to come in and out. So, Mr. Taylor, you're 100% correct. This was done outside of how it should be done, but I felt as a landlord and as a Kingstonian during the pandemic, I had to take some chances.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And that was certainly has been recorded and noted. Further questions from members? Don?
Just another comment. There are some there have been attempts to sort of improve the appearance of this doorway. And I just wondered, maybe down the line, someone should think about adding a portico to that door so you just can't see what's happened very easily. So anyway, that's just a thought for the future, perhaps.
Yeah, okay. Nate, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, and the design of this was our best attempt of what we had, because as we all know, glass doors. I'm dealing with some other projects where we're 26, 28 months for delivery. So there was also the element of using what we had to get this, and we are committed to make it something this committee and Kingston can be proud of. And we will make it look good. But like I said, we just had to get something done and get this business open. So
Yeah, okay, thank you. And the point in the delay in supplies is well worth remembering as well. Perhaps what we would informally suggest, probably through Alex, then that some suggestions can be made in cooperation with you in modifying what we've got here to make it more appropriate. Alex?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. I would just add to just be clear that the deck patio structure is not part of this application. But in the future, we may address that portion, and there may be, to Mr. Taylor's point, there may also be future suggestions for improving the door, perhaps again.
The whole area. Okay, thank you very much. Though that's not on the table at present. Other questions from committee members? Don Mitchell.
I just have a couple quick comments. So for me, it does destroy the balance and the symmetry of that whole wall somewhat. So in line with other people have suggested, just as another voice, it grabbed me that way. I'd wondered about the designation bylaw in terms of it suggesting there haven't been a lot of alterations to the building, but in conjunction with other applications now and eventually with the next phase, it sort of seems like saying there have been no alterations is a little bit disingenuous. So I wondered about updating that. And the final thing is that I anticipated that the rationale behind why it was done is what we heard today. I just wondered, with the city looking at planning and heritage to streamline processes, I wondered if offline city staff and Mr. Dornkamp could actually drill down into what the fear of moving fast really was, or what really, stopped going through the straight process, because there may be some lessons learned there that the city might be able to have processed it fast enough for you. And those little tweaks might have been adjusted that really today are harder to do, but might have been easier then. Those are my thoughts, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments? Members of the public? Madam Clerk, do you see any at all?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay. In that case, then you have a recommendation of one clause and with 5 conditions. Looking for a mover as written. And I see Don Mitchell, and a seconder. I see Don Taylor. Thank you very much. Either of you or others want to speak to that motion as printed? And seeing none, I will put that to the vote. With those in favor, raise their hands or speak.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And those against, and that carries 6 to none against. So thank you, and thank you, Nate, for being so truthful on that. And as Don Mitchell suggested, we're looking at changing the procedures, and there may be some lessons to be learned from what happened with you. So I'm sure Alex will be back in touch. Thanks,
you guys could also just make sure a pandemic doesn't happen again too. That'd be great.
We will pass a motion. Motions are very good. Okay, 437 King Street West. Ryan.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, welcome.
Thank you. So yes, this application is 437 King Street West. Can I get the next slide, please? It's on the northwest corner of King Street West and Livingston Avenue. Next slide, please. It is designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act back in 1987. It's known as Copsworth. The subject property has cultural heritage value, both in its design as a dramatic Victorian era building, but also in its association with both architectural firm Power and Son and architect William Newlands. The designation bylaw includes the following attributes. It notes the stucco dwelling with the complex irregular plan, the high-pitched gable roof with a number of different size projections, and the hip roof porch with its decorative balustrade and woodwork. Next slide, please. So the application before the committee today is under Section 33 of the Act. There's an application. The applicants would like to renovate the upper floor, which is currently an attic space. They'd like to include additional habitable space, such as 2 bedrooms, a utility room, a common room, and an additional bathroom. No additional units are proposed, simply expanding usable space in the house. So to facilitate that, an application of the Heritage Act has been submitted to construct a rear north-facing gable dormer with an egress window. The dormer will be approximately 2.6 meters wide and has a 12-12 pitch gable roof with a double casement window that is designed to provide emergency egress from the floor. The dormer will be clad in horizontal cove wood siding in a color that matches the carriage house edition, which is a dark red, and dark asphalt shingles that match the rest of the house. In addition, to provide additional light into the upper floors, 4 new skylights are proposed. That includes 2 on the east side of the building, 1 on the west, and 1 on the north side of the dwelling. And finally, there are 6 windows on the upper floor of this building, and the owners wish to retain a carpenter to evaluate those and provide some restoration refinishing to those windows to improve their functionality and performance. And the windows are to be retained, repaired in situ. So in terms of our evaluation, according to the submission, it notes that the proposed dormer will be set back 1.5 meters, or about 5 feet from the roof, up the roof pitch, but will be lower in height than both the flat roof section of the main house and the ridge line of the northern addition, thus largely out of view from both King Street West and Livingston Avenue. The pitch of the dormer roof gable was a discussion point with the applicant at a preliminary stage of this design. The pitch was increased as far as was felt possible in order to maintain the functionality of the dormer and the egress potential of the window. The casement window design was chosen, again, both for to satisfy the legal egress requirements of the building code and to complement the tall, narrow windows throughout the upper floor of this building, many of which have few mutton bars to speak of. While the new dormer will have an impact on the heritage character of the resource, it is designed to conserve the dramatic and varied profile of the original roofline and will be located away from public view. In order to allow the additional natural light into the upper space, the owners wish to install 4 skylights, as I mentioned. We've worked with the owners and their agents to place the skylights in locations that are least visible and have least impact on the roof profile, particularly from the public realm. No skylights are proposed in the King Street, which is the south elevation, and only 1 skylight is proposed on the Livingston Avenue or the west elevation. And a condition of approval has been included to encourage the owners to source skylights that have the shortest or the shallowest profile to minimize their visual impact on the resource. And the proposal to repair the windows is a welcome one, and each window, we understand, will be assessed individually by a qualified carpenter and repaired in situ. At this point, there's no intention to replace the windows, simply to repair caulking, painting, and performance. So permitting the building to evolve to suit the owner's needs will ensure the continued upkeep and investment into this valuable resource. The new addition, the dormers and skylights, will allow the heritage resource to adapt and accommodate an expanded use. And they are designed to be compatible with this and subordinate to the heritage attributes of the property. And if removed in the future, the resource could be returned to its current design. So staff support the conditional approval of this application. Can I get the next slide, please? We did circulate this internally. Many of the technical comments will be addressed at building permit stage, including environment's flag about designated substances identification and soil management, and to planning's flag about confirming zoning compliance. Committee also reviewed this, and the members responding noted general support for this application, and their comments are in your Exhibit D of the report. So, Mr. Chair, this is our recommendation with a series of conditions. I believe there's a second page with some additional conditions. Thanks.
Can you just hold that page for a moment? Ryan, can I just confirm with you that 7 there gives the owner permission to assess the windows and repair as long as it's in accordance with our policy on window renovations, and presumably if anything more is needed, they have to come back for another permit?
It's yes and no, Mr. Chair. The condition is intended to, these windows haven't been looked at in some time.
Yeah.
So the exact condition of them is unknown.
Yep.
Their intention is to repair. If they're found to be sort of falling apart as they take them out to repair them, they are to come back to staff with assessment prepared by proper qualified carpenter, and we'll look at options at that point.
Good, thank you. Thank you for that then, Ryan. Committee members, questions, comments? Not seeing any movement anywhere. Oh, Don Taylor.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to follow up Peter's concern about the windows. Basically, we don't know what their condition is. I think in my comments, I said something like, we really shouldn't be making recommendations without better information on the windows. And, from what's been said, I understand that staff and the owners are conscious of the need to treat these windows properly. Nevertheless, past experience has been pretty bad, where owners and applicants have been told you can make repairs in accordance with the windows policy. And of course, the windows policy said you can replace windows if necessary. And applicants can always find a carpenter or tradesperson to say, yes, they should be replaced. So we're in a situation that I don't think we should be in. I don't think the committee should permit the replacement of these windows without being consulted. And I don't, maybe it would be sufficient if this is noted in the minutes and staff will follow it. But in a better world, we'd have better procedures where replacement of windows should not be permitted without consulting the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the point there being that 7 refers to a city policy, which in fact goes beyond what this committee normally likes to agree. And that's worth noting down, I think, Ryan, and remembering, and in our review, which I know we're reviewing all of those, keeping in mind. Okay, thank you very much, Don, for that. Other comments, questions on 437 King? And seeing none, anybody in the public, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any hands at this time.
Yeah, no. My listing of the public is not working this morning. That's why I keep on asking you. Okay, thank you very much. Needing a motion then to a mover and a seconder to approve as printed. Don't all rush at once. That's Don Mitchell, and the seconder is Jalinka. Thank you very much. And I heard Ted as well, so I got Jalinka first. Anybody want to speak again or make amendments? And not seeing or hearing anything, the motion then moved by Don Mitchell, seconded by Jalinka Benny, as printed. Those in favour, if you can raise your hand or shout.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Those against, and that carries without opposition. And I've just realized I have not written down when we move on to part 5, so somebody's going to have to remind me. Ryan, is 168 Wellington in part 5?
It is not, Mr. Chair.
So that's odd boundary, and then we've got 90 Johnson coming up, and I don't think that is either. So, okay, Ryan, 168 Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although 90 Johnson may be in a part 5, I think it's in Sydenham District. Yeah, I'm just getting my spot here. Yeah, 168 Wellington Street. Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? This property, I'm sure you all aware, is on the corner of Brock and Wellington, the northwest corner. It's designated under Part 4. Can I get the next slide, please? The building was built in 1842. It's one of 3 round corner stone buildings designed by architect George Brown in the downtown area in the 1840s. The first major alteration to the ground floor level, which is the subject of today's application, occurred in the 1950s by the Victorian Grey Truss Company, who filled in all the arched openings to accommodate square windows and knee walls. And then in 1972, by designs by local architect Wilfred Sorensen, those arches were restored and full glazing, recessed full glazing was added to the openings. As well, signage and then later lighting was installed on the springing of the arches of the openings along Brock and Wellington Street. So this property was designated in 1975, amended in 76, making it one of the early designations in the city, and I dare say probably the province as well. Next slide, please. So today we're looking at signage under section 33 of the Heritage Act. The applicants are looking for approval to advertise the new restaurant that is proposed for the ground floor, which is a Heist Restaurant and Wine Club, and the residential units above, which are known as the Wellington Lofts. The proposal includes an illuminated sign above the main corner entrance with an arched transom, within the arched transom. The new metal sign will be rounded, sort of a half moon shape, as you can see in the plans, to fit within the arched opening. It'll be illuminated from the interior to cast a halo glow around the white letters that are to be slightly projected from the matte black pan. And then right in the center of the image, you can see there are two metal signs also proposed. There are three in total, one on each side of the central corner opening. They are unilluminated, black, and they are to advertise the restaurant and the Wellington Lofts. And then next slide, please. There is another one on the right side of the Brock Street, or Wellington Street, excuse me, entrance to the lofts. There are various vinyl decals you'll see on this submission showing the civic address for the residential units and the property owner landlord information. These are mounted on the interior of the glass, and they're here submitted as part of this application simply as context for your information, but are not subject to Heritage Act approval. Similarly, you'll see in the plans a patio proposed along Wellington Street. That too is not part of this application, but is subject to a patio permit through the city's process. So in terms of our review, Parks Canada has guidelines for window, doors, and storefronts in their standards and guidelines, and they direct that the design be compatible with the heritage building and not to obscure, damage, or destroy character-defining elements of the property. The windows and doors on the ground floor, however, they're not heritage attributes, have been recently replaced. The arches, of course, are attributes. The doors and windows on the ground floor are recessed in order to better showcase those stone arches. And the new signage is designed to fit comfortably within the arch of the main corner entrance. And the three stone column signs are to be installed into the mortar joints in accordance with city policy. So staff have no concerns with the proposed location, style, and color of the signage or the method of installation. The new signs will not interfere with the heritage attributes of the property and will be compatible with the heritage character of the building and the area. And the investment towards the current renovations of this property is a welcome rebirth to this landmark building, and we will hopefully ensure its viability and conservation into the future. We did circulate the usual internal departments. Conditions have been added to this approval to address some of the technical requirements noted by the agencies, such as sign permit requirements and encroachment permits. Heritage Kingston also provided comments, and they are summarized in Exhibit D of this report. And the staff have responded to a couple of the concerns within the body of our analysis. The next slide, please. And Mr. Chair, we support this application. It's conditional approval, and this is the recommendation we put forward to committee today. Thanks.
Good, thank you very much. So it's a recommendation with 5 conditions, which you've got in your package. Committee members, comments, questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you. So looking then for, unless members of the public
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any hands.
Thank you very much. Looking then for a mover and a seconder for the motion, the recommendation and the conditions as printed in the package and as Ryan showed on the screen. Jane Mclaughlin and Ted, thank you very much. Further discussion? And seeing none then, the motion as printed, moved by Jane Mclaughlin, seconded by Ted Smith. Those in favour, show your approval.
Aye.
Thank you. And those opposed? And so that is carried with no body voting against. Thank you, Ryan. Go back to Alex.
Hello again.
Hello. We do stay within part 4 here, don't we? Because the line is up
well, so no, we are actually into a part 5, though the
Oh, okay.
property is also designated under part 4, but this means we're under under section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act for 90 Johnson Street.
So we're now in part 5. Thank you.
Correct. And so this is under section 42, and it's an application submitting a request to approve the construction of a portico on the facade of the building. Next slide, please. So the property is located on the southeast corner of Johnson and Wellington Streets. Right there, you can see it. It's surrounded by the rest of the old Sydenham Conservation District as well as some other part 4s on the other side of the street. Next slide, please. Property contains a relatively austere neoclassical residence that was constructed in 1851. Next slide, please. So the property is designated under both parts 4 and 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Part 5 is part of the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. The building's rated as being significant to the district, and it has cultural heritage value and interest because of its physical design value and historical associative value. The neoclassical style residence was designed by William Coverdale and constructed in 1851 for James A. Henderson, who was a barrister and later a judge. Next slide, please. So the applicant and the designer contacted Heritage Planning staff back in February of this year to share their initial design and to receive preliminary feedback. At that time, staff reviewed the old Sydenham HCD plan and confirmed that section 5.4.3, which speaks to porches and verandas and balconies, includes guidance for the construction of new porches where historical evidence demonstrates the existence of earlier porches. So in this case, there is no evidence that a covered porch or portico previously existed on this property. However, the architectural style and composition of the facade can comfortably accommodate a portico, and there are other comparable historic houses in the area, such as the Gildersleeve building, that do have porticos. Accordingly, at this time, staff conveyed their support in principle for the addition of a classically proportioned portico and gave more detailed design guidance. So the existing wooden stairs that you see there now, those uncovered stairs, are not original to the building, nor are they considered to be a heritage attribute. They are also in a deteriorating state of repair, and accordingly, staff are supportive of their replacement, subject to an appropriate design. Next slide, please. So consequently, guideline 17 of section 4.3.6 of Parks Canada Standards and Guidelines provides the most relevant recommendation, which advises modifying, replacing, or designing a new entrance, porch, or balcony required by a new use or applicable codes and regulations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in this case, we're looking at the treatment of rehabilitation as defined by those standards and guidelines. So in other words, this is a sensitive adaptation of an historic place for continuing or compatible use while maintaining its historic value. So in this case, we've got a historic house that is now a commercial office use. So the portico is intended to provide an identifiable entrance for visitors, as well as some level of weather protection. So when staff have visited the site on multiple occasions and have also met with the applicant, designer, as well as several Heritage Kingston members in mid-May, the design of the portico has subsequently undergone several revisions in response to staff's comments, engineering comments relating to encroachment in the city's right-of-way, which has been a significant, certainly significant element of its design, as well as most recently, a number of responses from Heritage Kingston members. So although not explicitly intended for portico or porch additions, section 5.2.2 of the district plan does provide some relevant guidelines, including that the construction of additions should not entail removal, covering, or other adverse impacts on the heritage attributes of the original building. So the proposed portico that you can see on this drawing in front of you does not obscure or conceal any heritage attributes on this building. It is centered around the original pair of wooden entrance doors, which are recessed within the central bay with pilasters sited on either side of the reveal. The height of the portico and the arched friezeboard allow for an unobstructed view of the fanlight above the entrance doors, which is a heritage attribute of the building. Section 5.2.2 of the district plan also advises that additions should be clearly distinguishable in form and detail. The portico's design provides clear design clues that it is a modern interpretation of a classical portico. For example, the absence of decorative detailing such as dentils on the friezeboard, modest capitals, and the plain metal railings reinforce the legibility between the original building and this new work. Lastly, the individually mounted bronze lettering on the friezeboard is a sympathetic yet modern style of signage. Heritage planning staff did raise concerns early in the design process regarding the size of the portico and ensuring that it does not overwhelm the original building. This concern was echoed by Heritage Kingston members at our site visit and included comments regarding the size of the columns, shape of the columns, and width of the stairs. In response, the designer has reduced the diameter of the columns, which are now more appropriately scaled. The width of the stairs has been maintained with a central railing, but the designer does maintain that the design will be very light, and this railing will be very light in its design so as not to draw attention towards itself. And there is a condition requiring details of all the new railings to confirm their appropriateness. So finally, next slide. Section 4.3.4 of the district plan provides guidance for the restoration or replica of a porch, which is largely generally not applicable. However, the section does address materiality and notes to avoid fiberglass or plastic replicas of wooden details unless there are no other reasonable options. So this is a new portico and a new porch. However, the materials for the construction are commonly found throughout the district. So they include painted wood, stone, and iron metal railings. So these are all traditional materials that will complement the existing limestone building. So in summary, Heritage Planning staff support the addition of the proposed portico. The design is complementary to the architectural style of the building, but is clearly a product of its own time. There are no identified negative impacts to the building's heritage attributes, and the cultural heritage value of the property will be conserved. So if we move to the next slide, there are a number of conditions. I believe it goes on to the following slide as well to include some more conditions, essentially relating to details of the new stonework so that we can better understand that design. Ensuring obviously that the new masonry and the connection of the new portico respects the city's policy on masonry restoration, so it doesn't do irreversible damage, building permits, and there will be a long-term encroachment agreement given that this whole porch is technically in the city's right of way. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Good. Thank you very much for that, Alex. Members, can you confirm that your dash comments have been properly included? And seeing no other, welcome, Councillor Oosterhoff. Members of the public, comments and questions? Madam Clerk, any public showing interest here?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any hands at this time. I do believe that Catherine Stone is here to represent the applicant, if she had anything that she'd like to add.
Catherine, do you want to comment at this point?
Sorry, hello.
Hi.
No, I've read all the information. I appreciate what everybody has said and have taken to note and heart all the indication, and hope we've met all your requirements. And I do understand the details have to follow, and I'm not sure I've got a big picture in front of your head. Let me see. Oh, there we go. Okay. So yes, I have nothing further to add. If I'm optimistic that you're going to let us keep going with this.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of the committee, questions, comments, thoughts? No, quiet. Don Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just two quick comments. One is I think we have to acknowledge and appreciate the fact that the applicants were willing to work with, especially some of the very knowledgeable members and staff that had indicated little changes that would improve it. And so I appreciate that. And the second one is I think it's really important to the district. Commercial has a lot more people activity usually than residential. I think it's really important that we keep commercial connected to and near the district. And then I like the way that this building with this addition sort of differentiates itself from residential as a commercial use. And I think that's important. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Other questions, comments? Don Taylor?
Yes, I'm very pleased with the general design and the response of the applicants to suggestions. One of my suggestions still seems to remain in the design, in which the railing down to the street is not parallel to the stone wall. And to me, that isn't really appropriate in sort of classical design. So I'm still of the opinion that it would be better that if the iron railing were parallel to the stone taper, the sloping stone wall. Perhaps that will all disappear under vegetation anyway, but I just like to leave that comment there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Alex, do you want to comment on that?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. Don, I just want to make sure I understand. So we did receive that comment and I spoke to Catherine about it. I had understood that perhaps it was a misunderstanding of the way that the drawing is. So the railing does curve and is with the stone wall beneath it. Is that the concern? I'm not sure that I do understand now that I'm hearing you reiterate the concern.
No, if we could see those drawings again, can you bring them back up? The drawings of the steps.
So I think it was maybe slide 6, if that helps.
There.
Okay.
See on the right, the top railing of the sloping handrail is not parallel to the bottom railing. And to me, in sort of symmetrical, classical sort of design, it would be better if they were parallel. Or maybe it's an optical illusion that I'm not seeing, but certainly.
So the other, Don, the other way of saying that is that the uprights are getting shorter as they get closer to the street.
Yes.
Okay.
All the balusters, saying all the balusters should be the same height.
Okay, that understood. No, that makes sense, Don. I appreciate that. And now that I understand that comment, in terms of receiving the details, we can talk to Catherine about that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's helpful.
Good. Thank you, Don, for that. Other comments, questions? Just totally not off topic, but for committee members to know, we were talking about the wandering onto city property. In fact, the whole front of that building is legally on city property, and it really makes it difficult for additions and changes to be made. And the city is very good in helping, but it can cause problems. Committee members, then you cannot change the motion which you have printed on you with 1 recommendation and 8 conditions. Looking for a mover as printed, Don Taylor, and a seconder as printed, Jane. Thank you very much. Further last discussion on the motion as printed. And seeing none, then moved by Don Taylor, seconded by Jane Mclaughlin. Those in favour, please show their favour.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. That is now 7 in favour. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
And good luck with this one. We move on to 167 King Street and welcome Philip.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So this is an application for 167 King Street East, which is Part 4 and Part 5 under the Ontario Heritage Act. So this permit is largely a major restoration project with some minor porch alterations. Next slide, please. 167 King Street East is located mid-block between Lower Union and Gore Street and is 180 meters northeast from City Park. Next slide, please. 167 King Street East is characterized as a one half of a it's a double brick dwelling with 2 stories, 2 bays, doors in the end bays, decorative woodwork, and a non-original wooden porch. Next slide, please. The most relevant aspects of these designation bylaws include that it's designed by William Coverdale. It is one of 2 brick buildings with the same design. And finally, its front facade has many important ornamental features, such as the flat hooded mound supported by long, slender consoles, the denticular treatment under the main cornice of the bay window, the cream of facta crown molding decorated with dentrils, topped with a short cast iron railing, and the roof has mullion, my apologies, and brick gable and parapets with ashar corbel stones. My apologies for that, pronouncing those words. Next slide, please. So the applicant has assessed the wood features on the front facade of the property and has determined that approximately 50% of the roof soffit/fascia, 10% of the wood accent of the front door, and 90% of the cornice/fascia over the protruding bay windows require replacement. This proposal seeks to only replace those character contributing soffits, fascias, cornice / entrance features that are impossible to repair and to retain as much of the original material as possible. Where the original woodwork requires a like-for-like replacement, the applicant will use the remaining wood features as a model for the proposed recreations. This is a condition of approval. Further, the new wood features will also be dated to confirm the year of installation for future research and treatment purposes. This is also a condition of approval. Those repairable features will be preserved, scraped, and painted like for like, and protective coatings will be applied to all related wood features to increase their lifespan. Next slide, please. In addition to the major restoration of the wooden features, the existing non-original wood deck is proposed to be removed and replicated in wood, except for the more appropriately proposed posts and balusters. The deck frame will be pressure-treated wood. On this note, I wanted to thank committee for providing comments on the porch and for the additional follow-up that resulted in a more balanced approach of a more attainable but more appropriate design for the post and balusters. It was great working with committee to try to find this balanced approach that would be acceptable to the applicants while also improving an existing situation. So I wanted to make that note. So the porch restoration, while not original or restored based on historical evidence, with its more appropriate posts and balusters, will better complement the building's historical value, as the current porch as it stands is not appropriate. This proposal is largely a restoration project, but due to the amount of work that is necessary, it rises to the level of an alteration and necessitates Heritage Kingston review and council approval. Next slide, please. So these are the proposed alterations that I detailed a little bit earlier in the application. Next slide, please. And I wanted to highlight a few major conditions that were noted earlier, namely the original remaining woodwork will be used as a model for the recreations, and the replicated woodwork needs to be subtly dated with the year of installation. And with that, thank you very much, everyone, and I'll be here to answer any questions as needed.
Good, thank you, Phil, and thank you for working with the committee on this one. It's an interesting renovation, alteration, whichever word we're going to come up with. Members, dash comments, are they correctly included in the package? And seeing and hearing no comments, then members of the public able to ask questions, make comments, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any hands at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee members, questions, further comments? Don Taylor.
Yes, thanks for the presentation, Philip. I don't know if you noticed, but the recommendation alteration 5 has an embarrassing typo where it says the woodwork should be scrapped and repainted when you mean scraped and repainted, and there's a difference. So I hope somehow that can be corrected before it goes to council and becomes law. My other comment is that the balusters and posts are fine, but along with those balusters are sort of matching handrails, which are sort of hardwood curved handrails that fit those balusters. And I assume they will be part of the construction rather than just a piece of 2x4 or something like that as the handrails. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hope you've taken note of that then, Philip. Other questions, concerns? Seeing none then.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I do see that Mr. Mitchell had his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Don.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just wanted one clarification with just an anecdotal comment to begin with, which is there is a growing concern in the district that I know from the District Association and others that the way that trees are being handled and the replacement of trees in the district is a general public concern. I noted in the report under forestry services, it said a tree removal permit will be required. I just wondered if you could explain that a little more.
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. So in this case, there's no trees that are proposed to be removed. So I believe that's just the long-term, so when someone says a tree permit, they characterize it sometimes as a tree removal permit. In this case, there's no tree to be removed at all. I believe that's just a longer title. However, in this case, we're trying to protect the tree by having all of, I guess, the genie lift or whatever would be necessary to do that work. We want to protect the root system, which means there's going to have to be a fencing around that tree and to prevent any storage of materials over that as well. So we're actually trying to do our best to maintain that tree as it's an important attribute for the district and for the city in general. I do appreciate you bringing that up, though, and that is a very imprecise wording for what is actually going to be protected here in this case. So I will note that for the future. Thank you.
Good, thank you, and thanks, Philip, for that one. Other concerns, questions? Okay, thank you. And we check through the public. So committee members looking for a motion, a mover for the printed motion, which is it's 6 recommendations and 7 conditions. And recommendation 5 is scraped rather than scrapped, and the tree permit is to help the tree, not to get rid of it. So a mover, if we can. Don Mitchell, thank you, and a seconder. Don Taylor, thank you very much. Any further discussion? And seeing none, those in favor, if you could show your hand or speak.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And those opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you all very much for that, and good luck. It's going to be an interesting one to watch. Alex, I think we're back to you for 35 Brock Street.
Yes, hello again. And through you, Mr. Chair. So this is an application under section 42 for 35 Brock Street, which is requested approval to construct a small rear addition at the 2nd floor level to replace 3 dormer windows on the rear gable roof slope with 3 skylights, and to repair the rear gable roof slope and replace the existing asphalt covering with a standing seam metal roof. Next slide, please. So the property, as many of you are well aware, is located on the north side of Brock Street, east of Ontario Street, and west of King Street. Next slide, please. So the property contains a 2.5-story commercial limestone building constructed in 1840 to 1841. Next slide, please. The property is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Market Square Heritage Conservation District. Importantly, the property is a representative example of commercial construction in Kingston from the early to mid 1800s. The property has historical or associated value due to its association with Henry Matheson and William and Mary Atkinson. And certainly it has contextual value because of its contribution to the evolved character of the district. So the district plan does note several key exterior attributes, and it's worth mentioning that the application before you today all relates to the rear of the property. We did see an earlier application in the fall that addressed the sort of exterior renovations to the front of the building, and those plans are still approved and underway, but this relates to changes on the rear of the property. Next slide, please. So staff have visited the site on many occasions, given the previous heritage application and of course its proximity to our staff offices at City Hall. The subject property is located adjacent to Springer Market Square and forms part of a significant historic streetscape and perimeter to the district. So these proposed alterations all pertain to the rear of the building. So on this slide, you can see both the rear elevation as existing when standing on the ground floor addition at the rear, looking back at the second floor and roof of the building, and not the most obvious because you can't really see its location from ground level in the parking lot, but this is the best image of sort of giving you a sense of how well tucked away it is in the corner there. So the one-story proposed addition is approximately 37 square meters in size, located at the second floor level above the existing one-story addition on the rear elevation. This addition will not be visible from Springer Market Square or from the municipal parking lot at the northwest of Brock and Ontario streets. Its small size and second-story height make it entirely screened by the adjacent building at 33 Brock Street. Next slide, please. And again, this is the image looking to the west with 33 Brock Street in the foreground. And in this application, the size of the addition is so small that it won't in any way peek out from behind 33 Brock Street, so it'll be entirely concealed. The addition will conserve the existing height of the original building and will not exceed the height of either adjacent buildings. So 33 and 39 Brock Street. Accordingly, the impact of this new construction on the cultural heritage value and character of the district is negligible. Next slide, please. So the architectural character of this small addition is similar in style to the previously approved three-story addition. The design includes a flat roof, painted horizontal composite or fiber cement board siding. The district plan states that the materials of exterior features of a new building within the district shall be physically and visually compatible with and of comparable quality to the heritage attributes and materials of the surrounding buildings. So painted composite or fiber cement board closely resembles painted wood siding and will therefore have a traditional appearance that is physically and visually compatible with the adjacent stonework of the original building. Equally, it'll be of a contrasting texture, which will help differentiate between the original building and this new addition. In contrast to the previous three-story addition design, this proposal conserves the rear gable roof slope, which, although not identified as a heritage attribute in the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value, does form part of the original building. Alterations are proposed for the retained rear gable roof slope, including its repair and replacement of the asphalt roof covering with a new standing seam metal roof, which will match the front approval for the standing seam metal roof on the front gable. But the departure here is that the 3 dormer windows will be removed and replaced with skylights. The standing seam metal roofing will be a dark gray color to match that on the front gable. And the new skylights will be sized to fit within the openings resulting from the dormer window removal. So this approach conserves physical evidence of the existing dormer window placement and their size and provides an opportunity to restore the dormer windows in future. The existing dormer windows are in a deteriorating state of repair, and they've clearly undergone many past alterations. Conditions have been included as part of the recommendation that require photographic documentation of this rear elevation prior to the removal of the dormer windows, as well as for details of the new skylights to be submitted prior to installation. So in summary, the proposed rear addition and alterations to the gable roof slope on 35 Brock Street will have a lesser impact on the heritage fabric and form of the original limestone building than the previous approval. Additionally, the heritage attributes of 35 Brock Street will be conserved, and there will be no impact to the cultural heritage value and attributes of the Market Square Heritage Conservation District. Thank you so much. We'll move to the next slide, which is an approval to recommend these alterations, subject to, again, a number of conditions that move on to the next slide as well. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you again, Alex. Committee members, are your dash comments properly recorded? If not, let me know. Good, thank you very much. Members of the public, Madam Clerk, do we have any in the public who are wishing to speak on 35 Brock?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any hands. However, I do believe that Ms. Wilson is here to represent the applicant, unless she had anything that she wanted to add.
And she is welcome to join in at any time then. Do you have anything to add at this point?
No, I think Alex covered everything very well. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Gillian. Committee members, questions, comments, thoughts? And I'm not seeing any movement anywhere. Wave quickly, or we move on to looking for a mover and a seconder for the printed motion. 3 parts and then 8 conditions. Mover, please. Jane Mclaughlin. Seconder. Don Mitchell. Okay, further discussion? And seeing none, then the motion as printed, moved by Jane McFarlane, seconded by Don Mitchell. Those in favour, you can so let me know.
Aye.
Good, thank you all very much. And those against? And that carries unanimously, which brings us down to 33 Brock Street, and I will hand over the chair to you, Don.
Yes, thank you, Peter. So this application at 33 Brock Street is for new signage. Alex, are you speaking to this?
That'd be me, Mr. Chair.
So, sorry, Ryan, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Carry on.
Thank you. So this is part of that historic streetscape that Alex was speaking of just a minute ago. This building is immediately next door at 33 Brock Street. Next slide, please. As you can see, it's on the north side of Brock Street, right across from Springer Market Square and City Hall in the Market Square district. Next slide, please. So it contains a 2.5-story a building known as former Steamboat Hotel. It's designated under Part 5 in 1985 and updated in 2013. It's a mixed-use building built between 1840 and 1842 following a pretty significant fire that destroyed many buildings on this stretch of Brock Street. With its limestone facade, second floor window openings, and shed roof profile with parapets, the building has contributed greatly to that evolving character of the Market Square district. Next slide, please. So today we have an application under Section 42 of the Act, Part 5, to look at new signage for this building. The applicants have submitted a request to install a 0.5 meter tall by 1.5 meter wide by approximately 20 centimeter thick sign. This new sign will be installed on the sign band or fascia board above the first floor cornice, along the first floor cornice above the doorway facing Brock Street. The sign is a combination of acrylic and aluminum with both internal white and halo style green lighting. In terms of our assessment, the district plan includes several objectives for the plan itself. The proposal supports those objectives, particularly Objective 3, which speaks to ensuring that signage is physically and visibly compatible with the heritage attributes of the individual buildings and the square itself. There are some policies in the district plan specifically related to signage, and they read that the signage shall be proportioned to fit easily between openings in the facade. And the previous business owner at 33 Brock had a mast arm sign at this location. The new sign will be in the same location, but will be a wall sign. It's located above the recessed entranceway and framed by 2 wooden pilasters. The front ground floor cladding is a later addition and is not original nor included as a heritage attribute of the building. The sign fits well along the sign band with about 5 centimeters of space on each side. This location ensures that no heritage attributes are obscured by the sign. The face of the sign is made up of white acrylic with a white internal LED lighting. Now, while the external lighting is aluminum, sorry, let me try that again. While the exterior is aluminum with LED green halo lighting behind it. The plan states that the types of illumination should be carefully considered. And while external lighting, such as the gooseneck lighting, which is to remain, is preferred, self-illuminated signs are permitted in the district, and provided that they do not have an adverse impact on the attributes of the building or the district. Now, as a condition of approval, staff have included a condition to allow staff an opportunity to review the intensity of the illumination once installed in order to ensure that it does not adversely impact the district itself. And the agent of this applicant has offered to make concessions to decrease the intensity of the light should it be deemed to be too bright upon inspection, such as implying a tinting film on the inside of the acrylic face, or using the gooseneck lightings, which I mentioned are to remain, or replacing the lights within the sign box. However, their preference is to use the sign box as presented in their application. This was circulated to our usual departments. Condition of approval have been added to satisfy requirements of the commenting agents, such as sign and encroachment permits. The committee also provided comments, which are in Exhibit D of the report, and staff have included reference and responses to those in our analysis. Final slide, please. So staff recommend approval of this application subject to the following conditions on your screen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ryan. Members of the committee, could you confirm that your dash comments have been correctly recognized? And I see no objections. Are there members of the public that wish to make comments or ask questions?
Mr. Vice Chair, I'm not seeing any hands. However, I do believe Caleb Phillips is the agent on this matter in case he had anything he'd like to add.
All right. Caleb Phillips, you're welcome to make comments if you wish.
Okay, thank you very much. That we'd be willing to work with the committee to get the lighting, if that seems to be the main issue, to fit, to make it not so obtrusive. As there are other light boxes in the neighborhood around the market, we would be willing to match the similar effect and appeal that they have.
Right, thank you. Comments or questions from members of the committee? I had one question. The previous sign had gooseneck illumination above the sign, and I assume those lighting elements will be removed, or will they remain?
The gooseneck lights are planned to stay just to keep the aesthetic of them there. They probably won't be used. Yeah.
All right, I think Heritage staff could consider that as part of their review of the lighting when this proceeds further. Are there any other comments from members of the committee? So I don't see any.
Mr. Vice Chair, I do see Mr. Mitchell has his hand up.
Oh, John, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, through you. I just wanted to flag maybe for staff, in looking at this application and considering a number of other signage applications we've had over the past year, just ensuring that we're doing kind of a consistency of handling. And actually it was the comment about matching what other people have done that sort of flagged this for me, which is some applicants have taken great pains to be sensitive to heritage cost as well in the way that they've applied their signage. There seems to be some debates over whether wood signage and gooseneck lighting versus illuminated signs, et cetera. And I think for committee members, particularly those of us maybe who haven't spent years working in this field, it starts to get a bit confusing about what is sort of permitted, what's not permitted, and whether or not there's an overall plan. And I think that goes up Princess Street as well. But because this is a heritage district, there's a lot of activity in the district. There are a lot of lighting plans already on City Hall, et cetera. I think that one aspiration for the future should be to provide more clarity about exactly how you want to manage this sort of sensitive square in terms of all of that and how it all comes together. So I just raise that for your future consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. That's a very good point. Certainly there are guidelines in the district plan. Ryan, do you want to add anything?
I have nothing further to add, Mr. Chair. I think it's a great suggestion, and if we move ahead with further planning in this area, I think that's something we should be considering. So, yes, thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Then I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the motion regarding the signage at 33 Brock.
Apologies, Mr. Vice Chair. I do see that Mr. DeToro, who is part of the applicant's team, does have his hand raised. I know that we've moved past the public. Perhaps he could add a few comments at this time before we move the motion.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, hi, my name is John DeToro. I'm the master franchisee for all of Ontario. I just wanted to let council know that our normal sign, excuse me, is actually an oval design, and we decided with Caleb and Raj to downgrade that. I guess the pop of the sign to kind of blend more into the square by making it rectangular, by trying to get rid of a lot of that lime green border and making the aluminum more contrast to the wood. We completely acknowledge that it is a historical building. We take homage to Kingston and its heritage and its history, and we're just wanted to try and do what's best to appease the franchise owner by driving in business, because he has to make money, and also by making sure we don't offend anybody in the area by having such an obtrusive sign.
Well, thanks for your comments. I appreciate your concerns and so on. So, are there any other comments? Then could I have a mover and seconder for the motion at 33 Brock?
I move.
Ted Smith, seconder. Don Mitchell. Ready for the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I return the chair.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we can't hear you just yet.
And then just do that again. Okay, good now. We move on to, thank you staff for all of those. We move on now to a pre-consultation. So remember, there'll be no motion at the end of this. Topic we've looked at before. Ryan, do you want to introduce 85 King East?
Mr. Chair, in the spirit of moving things along, I will happily pass this off to Mr. Downey to give you guys a bit of an overview, and I encourage the committee to voice your concerns and provide them comments at this early stage, so they can properly understand any holdups or any concerns of this design when they come in for the full permit. So,
okay, thank you very much, Bruce Downey. Welcome back.
I'm here.
You're there.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you and not see you, and that's just fine.
Okay, well, I have my video off because I'm in a dodgy internet connection, and if I happen to fade out, I have the phone numbers to call, but there's only a mild sense of anxiety about that.
Excellent.
I've been given the opportunity of putting together the graphics for this, and I've been given assistance by Elizabeth in doing that. Perhaps the first one could go up, Elizabeth. That's good. Okay, I thought we'd start with a little background. The committee, some of you anyway, may remember that the initial proposal for garages on these properties, that'd be 85 King and 46 Simcoe. We're only dealing with 85 King this morning, but once upon a time, it was both of them. And there were garages all along the western boundary. And on the northern end of those garages was a conservatory type building. And you can see how that building, the relationship it is with the porch on the west side of the main house, and how close it is to King Street. That was approved. Could I have the next slide, please? And this shows the elevations of that. You can just see peeking over the top of that, the dormers of the new garage at 83 King. But this particular picture shows what these garages were to look like. And on the bottom left-hand side of that picture, shows the relationship the garage has had with the proposed garage and conservatory had with the existing west porch of 85 King, which is on the left side of the drawing, and the garages of 83 King, which is on the right side of that drawing. And I just wanted to remind the committee that this was presented and approved by the committee. Following the committee's review of this and approval, we developed the drawings to which you see, and we still had planning approvals to go through. There was relief being asked from planning, and a series of many negotiations and discussions happened. Some alterations were being asked for to the configuration of this building, and in those discussions, the owner and the city planner, in this case it was Mr. Chris Wicca, discussed various alternatives, and what you are looking at today will be the alternative we looked at. Because this particular scheme, even though there might be some relief, there might be some adjustments that might be made to design, it didn't take away the planning approvals that could result in hearings, dispute hearings. So we were trying to avoid all of that by having something that was complementary to the building and satisfied the intentions of the owner. Could I have the next, please? So this is what the building looks like now. And you can see the main house of 85 King on the left-hand side of the top picture, and the garage, the new garage at 83 King on the right-hand side. And in the bottom is an historic fire maps photo showing 85 King. And it shows attached to the servants' wing or the annex and linking to the carriage house, a two-story building that I believe offers precedent for having a connection to that wing of the building, since that particular link could be viewed from Simcoe Street and obliquely, because across the properties of 83 King, before the garages went up, you'd be able to see the full west elevation of this property, and you'd be able to see that two-story wing connected to the service quarters quite easily. Can I have the next slide? Thanks, Elizabeth. So this is a partial site plan. So in the upper, along the left side of the drawing, and from the upper, you see an arrow showing an entrance off King that we're proposing. And then you see the roadway coming down to the new proposed garage, and attached to it, which isn't solid here because it doesn't meet the ground, is an archway that connects to the servants' quarters or the annex on the lower part of that drawing. I also tried to incorporate in this a south elevation. The north elevation is very similar, but the south elevation of the proposed garages with the two doors on the lower level and two banks of 3 windows on the upper level, the archway on the east side of that garage, and a walking pathway arched as well, in order to limit the degree to which the existing structure is, or the new addition is attached to the existing structure. I'm moving along here fairly quickly, but we can come back to these if the committee has any questions about this. I've asked to try to keep it brief. It does show, I think, in this though, a plan of an entry, and I can bring this up a bit later. But one of the components of this design that offered relief to something that has disturbed me since starting to work on this drawing on this building, gosh, almost a decade ago now, is its entry. Presently, you park in the back of this building, this mansion, and you walk around the servants' wing, and you come in up 4 feet into a little side door into a stairwell. That is the primary entrance of this mansion. And because the front of the building has no parking, and the front of the building just comes directly to a gate to a front door. So if you're coming in through by vehicle, everyone, guests and everyone, comes in through a little side door at the back of the building. And one of the aspects of this proposal that delighted me was the potential for having an entrance that was consistent with the magnificence of this structure. Next, please. So this is just an upper level of the garage, and now you have the upper level of that link. The link is stepped back from the garage in order to break the components of the addition down, the massing of it down, in order to further diminish its presence. And as you can see here, there's a window that will be changed into a doorway in the servants' quarters. The other windows will remain. One will still be outside. And on the lower level, there is one doorway that is being altered in order to provide an access, and the other two windows will look into the carriageway, so they'll remain as well. So we're have a minimal impact on the existing west wall of the servants' wing. It also shows here 3 windows proposed for the south end of the servants' wing. And it shows in the very top of the drawing that there will be, now it shows an elevator here, but the elevator was an earlier consideration, and the owner has decided not to have an elevator in this location. He's going to have one inside the building, but there will be, I've left it here because there will be the need for a small addition to the top of the servants' wing in order to gain access to a proposed roof deck. And but that particular access won't need to be above the eave of the existing house, so we won't be disturbing that. That's our hope anyway, as we develop drawings. So I left that in just so the committee can see that there will be some form of building there. We just don't know specifically what that will look like yet. Could I have the next drawing, please? Okay, so this gives, the top image gives a bird's eye view from the south, looking at the servants' quarters, the 3 new windows in the end of that building. Then it shows the link. Then it shows the garage attached to that. And this particular structure, the garage, is lower than the previous scheme. In other words, less height than the previous scheme that was approved, and it is less height than the existing servants' quarters roof, but it retains a similar kind of building envelope in that it has squared walls as both the servants' wing and the carriage house for the property that is now 46 Simcoe have. Now the servants' wing and the carriage house that do have a sloped roof, but the walls enclosing that roof are all square topped. So the top drawing shows what our thoughts on that new addition, and then the lower part of the drawing shows where that addition is in relation, and I show it in sort of a yellowy green color. We won't be using a roofing of that color, but that's just to have it stand out. Shows what its relationship is. It's slightly back from the garage at 83 King. It is in line with the garage is in line with the south end of the porch, but the link to the servants' quarters is set back from the port. So the entirety of the main house, the mansion, is unaffected by this particular addition. The lower picture, I think, shows well the entrance off King Street and how that entrance will work. The benefit of this is that whether or not you come off King or come off Simcoe, negotiating vehicles is possible on the site, as we displayed in the earlier scheme, but it does mean toing and froing in order to make that occur, and this makes it quite a bit easier, but also offers the tremendous benefit of the carriageway, which is an architectural feature that is used quite a bit in the Sydenham area and in downtown Kingston. So you can pass through that carriageway and leave your vehicle under cover to enter the house, which seems to be in keeping with the magnitude of this particular building. Could I have the next picture, please? Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so this is the last one, and it shows the street view elevations, and it shows how and the top one, how the proposed addition relates to the garage next on 83 King Street as height-wise. And I have shown the doors of that garage, of the proposed garage, and the windows in a very dark charcoal. They stand out. These are going to be openings. But you can see from the main building that the windows won't appear that black. The main building, they appear a light gray, which is similar to the stone. And the intention is that the garage doors will be painted in a similarity to the stone, so it they don't stand out, minimizes their visual impact. And the windows will be, I had mentioned 2 banks of 3 windows, and each of those windows is a double hung wood window with a approximately 8-inch wide timber between each one as a muntin, larger than a muntin, but a structural member between each one in order to break those up. So it is a consistent historical building style to the main building. The lower picture shows that color rendering a little bit clearer and also shows the archway. Now this picture was, I wanted to really show the new entrance off King Street. And the stone wall that's in the front of that building is broken into approximately 16-foot wide bays. So the rock face stone that meets the ground along that side is punctuated with pilasters of stone at about 16-foot intervals. And we would be taking one of those intervals away and returning it 90 degrees to where its original setting and reinstating it. And then ironwork would be put in, matching the ironwork of the existing railing. So we would be retaining the integrity of the street front fence work. I should point out here, and I did in my responses to some of the questions, that a tree that used to live just in front of that wall fell over the gate and the railing, the main entrance gate off King, and the railing and the stonework, damaging the gate, the railing, the posts, the stonework, and the owner had those repaired to match the original. I don't think anybody would really notice that any of that changed. He would be applying the same technology and effort into any work done along this side. This owner has been a pleasure to work with in the fact that he invests in authenticity. And so when the roof was changed, it was changed with exactly the same kind of slate and flashings. When the stonework on the west side, or the east side of the property along Simcoe was redone, that was done upgrading the whole wall exactly the way it was before. And I think that any work that he has done in this property, he has done a lot of research himself and invests in having people work on the property that can carry out work like the porch we're looking at in the bottom, that was totally dismantled, refurbished by a high-end restoration company in Ottawa, and brought back and reinstated original components, refinished, and that would retain its beauty and splendor on that side of the property. We're only altering a small section of railing at the south end, which really isn't viewed from the street. So the materials we hope to use on this are stone. The stone will be similar in nature to the existing stone on the property, since we think that continues the character of the property. Of course, it has elements of it that do speak of it being newer than the old structure, and we think that those will define it as being unique and distinct from the original building, plus the fact that it's set back totally from the main structure. I think I think that if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them. And the owner, I believe, might be online here someplace as well. I don't actually see his name.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Bruce. Firstly, going to the public. Madam Clerk, if you could tell me if anybody is there wishing to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, we don't have any members of the public in the gallery, unless there's any hands that you see in front of you. There's, I don't believe there's anyone who wishes to speak.
Okay, thank you. Members of the committee, then. You can show Don Taylor.
Yes, thank you. I certainly appreciate the careful thought and design that have gone into this proposal. In a sense, we're being asked to give an opinion as to whether we prefer this garage plan to the previous one. And an important difference is that the previous one also included garaging for the carriage house property at the rear, and this one apparently does not. So I'm wondering if we go ahead with this proposal, will there then be a new application for a garage for the Simcoe Street carriage house?
Bruce, can you help us? Yep.
Yes, Mr. Chair. No, there's not an intention for that. There may be need at some point by someone for a storage building for lawn equipment, but there hasn't been. But the owner would be satisfied with this garage servicing the property 85 King, with no need for one at 46 Simcoe.
Okay. Further questions, Mr. Taylor?
No, I think not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? It's your chance to, yes, Jane Mclaughlin.
Good morning, and thanks for that presentation, Bruce. I've already posted my concerns and suggestions regarding this request for information on Dash, but I wanted to highlight my 3 concerns regarding this proposal now. So my first concern is that the proposal to remove part of the stone wall and create an opening for a driveway on King Street is not supported by General Standard Number 1 of the Standards and Guidelines for the Conservation of Historic Places in Canada. That is, conserve the heritage value of a historic place. Do not remove, replace, or substantially alter its intact or repairable character-defining elements. So this is not, removal is not heritage appropriate. The wall is a character-defining element for the property, the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District, and the King Street Heritage Character Corridor. Although it is admirable that effort and expense has been put into the rehabilitation of this property, that does not and should not have any bearing on the request for information here today. What we as a committee should be addressing is conserving the heritage value of a place and district. The removal of a portion of this character-defining element is not heritage appropriate. My second concern is again related to the proposed access from King Street. Traditionally, a property such as this had rear lane or side street access. The former carriage house was accessed off Simcoe Street, and the front door access would have been limited to person traffic. There are many intact and existing examples of this along the corridor, and this should be preserved. Old Sydenham HCD plan asks us to consider 5 key questions when proposing an alteration for a property in the district. Question number 5 must be addressed here. That is, if the proposed intervention was commonly applied to properties, would the cumulative effect and impact be in keeping with the overall character of the Old Sydenham HCD? There are many properties in the district and King Street Heritage Corridor that have rear access for vehicles. And this new entrance and others could have a substantial negative impact on the heritage value of the district and should not be accepted. Old Sydenham HCD Plan 7.4 states heritage features such as combined stone and iron fences, stone walls and gate posts, and other historic forms of enclosures are heritage attributes of the district and should be conserved. Given that there is already driveway access off Simcoe Street, if a garage is desired, then access should be limited to what already and historically exists. My third concern is with the design of the addition and the number of policies in the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District that it does not adhere to, as noted in the staff report that we had in our agenda. Demolition, alterations, and new construction in the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District must conform to the policies of the Old Sydenham Heritage Area HCD Plan. Specific attention should be given to sections 5.0 and 7.0 of the plan. Some of the concerning policies include, but may not be limited to, the following: 5.2.2, 5.3, 5.4.1, and 5.4.2. Finally, I urge the committee, when reviewing and responding to this request for information, to give consideration to the 8 guiding principles in the Conservation of Historic Places and Standards and Guidelines for the Conservation of Historic Places in Canada 4.3, Guidelines for buildings and particularly exterior form is very useful, 4.3.1. And as it stands today, from a heritage conservation perspective, I cannot support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So I think I'll, an excellent response by Jane, but I think I'm actually going to push a little bit in the opposite direction, which is to look at the life and vibrancy and the whole change management concept of the district plan. And what I see, and I think actually with Mr. Downey I've had this conversation with accessibility where we try to drive at the intent of what we're trying to do and don't always get grounded in the specifics of what the legislation tells you can do or you can't do. And one of the things I found about this design was it was a very elegant response, and I really appreciated a lot of the nuance that was in the way that it was all kind of put together. So without going a lot further study and looking specifically at the district plan, I have these high level thoughts for your consideration. In no particular order, I noticed that there's a sloped curve in the front of the building. I don't know if that's related to where the tree was or not. And I wondered what that was about, whether or not there had been some form of a drive or an access there at some point. But if you look on Google Maps, you can actually see that there is some drop of the curb height and then return of the curb height. I wondered about that. I wondered about snow removal on the deck. And I wondered about whether or not you'd use some kind of scupper drain, or the design of the glazing rail that you're doing means you can't really get anything off the roof in an easy fashion. And I wondered about I guess it would be eastern side, whether or not there might be some ability to get snow off the roof, or how you would do that. The elevator on the third story, though not scope for this, it struck me that by being designed the way it is and so small, it actually draws my eye to it and really makes it stick out even more. And I wondered if you do go forward and there is any future external kind of look at that maybe doing something more meaningfully designed and larger, solarium, whatever, might actually, if it's designed right respectfully, might actually draw the attention to it less than just the straight poke up. I wondered about the glazing panels on the west side, that any furniture or activity that is up there is going to be seen. And I had wondered about that in terms of a visual intrusion in the district. And I know on some of the city buildings, particularly for affordable housing, they have strategically sort of arranged the glazing panels, so it's not just one large mass. My fourth point had to do with, it seemed to say in the proposal so far that there's almost this color design to kind of match the original structure, so to speak. And I wondered whether that, despite the very purposeful and meaningful design of a very modern addition, I wondered if that for me would then make it all seem like it was one structure. And so I wondered with the portion that is the arched way that you can pass under, I wondered if you could use color somehow to differentiate from the main building, so that then the garage may be similar colored or not, but whether a subtle color change might actually make it separate for me. The stone wall alteration, I had wondered about a different perspective to consider, which is what is the activity and the views of City Park with the way that we allow parking in cars, buses, and all types of things to park there. And this side of the district is looking at that view all the time, versus the view that we are sort of lensing, which is looking from City Park or looking from the city sidewalk towards the garage and trying to come to some consideration about appropriate views. And so the change management of the stone wall did not concern me as much. And I thought the way that it was decided to be stepped back, provided you can get that car off the road, et cetera, I thought actually it functioned very well. That said, the one view that I think is a shame to lose a little bit is there is at the very, I guess it would be the adjacent property, but there's a stone wall very, very far back in the property on the eastern edge that you can see from the streetscape, and that would be totally obscured. And unlike the fire plan map that you showed us, where you can see all the way back there, you would lose that by sort of severing it away. And so I thought that was one loss. I wondered about the dormers on the adjacent property. What is the function of those? And that stone wall or concrete wall basically completely blocking off those. I wondered if there's a compromise there using plantings or something to try to soften that a bit, or make those dormers not so cut off just by a property line. And the final thought is it kind of balances for me the apartment building, which has a very modern and not modern, but very new, overwhelming presence on the one side of the building from the streetscape, and the garage would actually sort of balance that with the modern on the other side. Those are my initial thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. And Bruce is no doubt noting all of these down, and I'm not expecting necessarily to reply to them. It's also recorded. You can go onto YouTube and watch it all over again, Bruce. But we'll keep these in mind when the full application comes. Other comments, questions from committee members? And again, Madam Clerk, can we just check with the public to make sure I'm not missing anybody there?
Mr. Chair, I will note that we do have one individual who has joined us. So at this time, if you wish to provide any comments to the current application on the floor, if you'd like to raise your hand in Zoom, you can do so by pressing *9. Just give a second here, Mr. Chair, to see if they'd like to speak. I'm not seeing a hand,
No.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, fine. Any last thoughts from committee? And you've got, I'll come to you in just a moment, two of you. You do have addresses in the package, so that if you have thoughts afterwards, you can certainly email or write to them. Jalinka?
Yeah, sorry. Dawn had mentioned the gap in the curbing in on King Street, and there used to be a large tree there. I saw an old streetscape photography. So there used to be an old tree, which is why there's a gap. So I just wanted to comment on that.
So that will be the tree that fell that Bruce was talking about. Okay, thank you very much. Don Taylor, you had a hand, I believe.
Just another comment or two. Yes, I'm concerned, as Jane is, with the change to the stone wall and the introduction of front entrance to garage on this important street. So it's, it's a question of what's better. And, I think it's up to, well, the committee might have opinions as to whether we prefer this design to the previous design. And in that context, I think on the whole, I prefer the previous design, especially, well, given Bruce's comment that at present, there is no plan to have substantial garage facilities for the Simcoe Street building. If that were really the case, then the previous design, which was a rather massive structure, could be reduced, and maybe there'd be less massiveness to the view from Simcoe Street, and less loft coverage by buildings and so on. So I guess I'm saying that my vote would be for the previous design, but with it reduced at the rear so that it's not quite so substantial. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Others? Last call. Again, then, thank you very, oh, sorry, Councillor Oosterhoff. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for being late. I want to look at this a little bit closer as well. I really appreciate the comments, certainly from Jane and Donald and Donald. So I want to respect that this is being handled so well and with so many really solid considerations. And so I kind of lean with Donald Mitchell right now too, but I'm going to look at it, and I'm open-minded about it. And I just want to say that it's a tremendous location, a tremendous property. And I know we're all very proud of it, even though it's not ours, but it's something special. So I think we know that everyone's looking at it and wanting the best outcome. So I look forward to seeing it in full and considering things. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Other thoughts? Seeing none then, Bruce, you've heard these, you know how to get in touch with us. We know how to get in touch with you. Thank you very much for your time and effort in producing this one. And we look forward to seeing what your final iteration of the proposal will be.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you indeed. That brings us on to, got to turn the right piece of paper. There we go. The working group reports. We have a Heritage Properties Working Group briefing notes there, page 215216. They need to be received. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair.
So I need a receiver, mover to receive these reports as printed, Don Taylor, and a seconder for that motion, Don Mitchell. Thank you very much. I'm not sure we can answer any questions, but if you have them, try me. But seeing none then, those in favour of receiving the Heritage Property Working Group briefing notes of May the 12th.
Aye.
And those opposed, and that is carried with no opposition. We have, I've just got to be careful I don't miss things out here. Ryan, emergency approvals.
Hello, Mr. Chair. It's Andrea.
Oh, Andrea. Okay, Andrea, emergency approvals.
I'm happy to report 2 emergency approvals. One, actually, we neglected to report at the last meeting, so we're bringing it forward now. Apologies for that. So that was on Highway 15, a leaky roof. And then it's in the agenda as well. And then also we have 437 King Street West, Copsworth, which we saw today for the full permit. There was also an emergency permit because as they started to sort of scope out their work, they realized there was some structural issues with the porch, so that we did issue an emergency permit to allow some propping and some initial work to look into that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Any questions on either of those? Okay, motions for next month. Not seeing any, no, sorry, there are none. Notices of motion for next month. Other business. Correspondence, then you have 2 newsletters. And I would remind you the July meeting is scheduled for July the 20th. And I just remind those of you who may have forgotten the Brockville Heritage Conference this Friday and Saturday. And I'm told that there are day passes still available if you suddenly decide that you want to spend Friday or Saturday in Brockville. So those of you who are going to be there, look forward to seeing you. Otherwise, unless I have forgotten anything, look for a mover to adjourn this meeting at 11:42. Jane, and a seconder. There's always lots of seconders. That's right, Don Taylor. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you for your time and